Now, other special times in Israel. Israel had special times of the Sabbath, okay? Every once a week they celebrate the Sabbath, Friday night to Saturday night. Sun goes down on Friday night, basically Saturday is their off day, and they celebrate the Shabbat, okay? Shabbat Shalom and Shabbat on Saturday, Friday night to Saturday night. We've talked about that already. They also have what's called a sabbatical year, and this is pretty neat. They basically had a sabbatical year every 7 years. They were to let the land rest. Every 7th year, they were to let the land rest. Would the land regenerate itself then? You know, plants decomposing and stuff. And so every 7 years, they were supposed to let the land rest for a year, and then they could farm it for another 6 after that. They were also supposed to release their servants, their indentured servants and things, were to be released on the 7th year. In that culture, a lot of the people that became servants, why was that? Okay, there's a famine in the land. You can't feed your family. There's a rich guy. He's got a big plot of land, and he is able to feed other people. So question, your family's going to starve. Question, what should you do? Do you tell this guy, okay, I will work for you. I will become your servant because I can't feed my family. And so basically, as a result of debt and famine and things, people would indenture themselves to richer people and things. But by the way, were they supposed to be set free every 7 years? And so every 7 years you'd be set free and be able to start over again and with this thing with debt. Now, one of the problems is, did the Jews ever practice the sabbatical year? Did they let the land lay fallow for a year after 6 years and then a year off? They never did this. It's Leviticus chapter 25, the Jews never did it. Did God keep track of this? Sure did. God kept track of it, and when they go to Babylon, when they go with Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, when they get hauled off to Babylon by Nebuchadnezzar, God says, you're in Babylon for 70 years. Why 70 years? God says, my land has not had its rest. God kept track of those 7 years, added them up, and says, you're out of here now. My land is going to get its rest for 70 years. You're off the land. You didn't do this. And so God kept track of it, and the Babylonian captivity is 70 years based on this. Okay? Yes?
Would that mean that servants were released?
Servants, yeah, servants would be released. Now, there's different ways you get servants, okay? The Jewish servants and stuff would be released. Is there another way you get servants by going into war and capturing, you know, those kind of people? And that's something different. But the Jewish servants would be set free and things. But the ones captured in war, I think, would probably continue on because they were in a different environment. So, yeah. Jubilee year. The Jubilee year is every 7 sevens. 7 sevens. Do you get that idea again of 7 sevens? 7 sevens plus 1 is every 50 years. Okay, 7 sevens plus 1, so 50 years. So it's got that 7-7 thing again. 7 sevens plus 1, 50 years. And this is in Leviticus 25. And this is when, suppose you got poor. You're getting poor. Can you sell your land for money? Do people pay money for land? So you sell your land for money, but that's your family inheritance. And so what happened is every 50 years you were supposed to get your family inheritance land back. Now, what's the benefit of this? Every 50 years you get your family inheritance land back. In other words, every 50 years does your family get to start over again. Would this have a tendency then to eliminate poverty because every 50 years you got it back to start over again? Would it also eliminate people getting really, really, really rich? Because every 50 years, what happens? They had to give it all back. Okay? So this was a way of kind of modifying things, and it's an interesting way to structure things, I think. Avoiding the very, very wealthy and avoiding extreme poverty as well. And so every 50 years, the land, the inheritance came back to the family on the year of Jubilee. A couple other feasts. The Feast of Purim. This is an interesting one from the book of Esther. Does anybody remember? We haven't read Esther, but let me just give you a snapshot of Esther. In the book of Esther, it's taking period during the Persian period, okay? Xerxes, Artaxerxes, the Persians. This is after the Babylonians. The Persians. It's the Babylonians are followed by the Persians. The Persians are followed by the whom? Who beat the Persians? Alexander the Great, okay? So it goes Babylonians, Persians, Greeks, okay? That's kind of the sequence. Who's after the Greeks? The Romans, okay? So that's kind of the sequence. Babylonian, Persian, Greek, Roman, okay? So the Persians are taking over, and this one guy doesn't like this Mordecai guy who's a Jew, and he says, I'm going to kill all the Jews, okay? His name is Haman. And so Haman says because he was not given the due respect that he thought he should have, he's going to kill all the Jews. Meanwhile, Esther is like the queen with the king, Artaxerxes, and so she's the queen, and she's Jewish. And so she finds out that this guy Haman is trying to kill all the Jews. So she speaks up then, invites Haman to dinner, and she speaks up and things. And ultimately, Haman is hanged. Haman had a gallows built that he was going to hang this Mordecai, her uncle, on. And basically what happens is Haman is hanged on his own gallows, and the Jews are allowed to fight back. So they avoided this Holocaust, this genocide. By the way, in every age, do people like to kill Jews? I mean, it's just, this goes back all the way to the Persian period. So here, the Jews are spared this genocide largely because of what Esther did. So they celebrate the book of Esther, okay? Now, here's how they celebrate it, okay? I'm sitting on a curb studying my Hebrew, and around the corner, Kiryat Menachem, come a bunch of little kids, all dressed up like cowboys and cowgirls and carrying these bags with candy. And they come up to me asking me for candy. And I think, like I'm American, and I'm thinking, what? This is, holy cow, this is a Jewish what? Halloween. I said, I didn't know that Jews did Halloween and things. So I think, man, it's a Jewish Halloween. They don't do Halloween. This is the Feast of Purim, celebrating Esther's, sparing of the Jewish people under the hand of God. This is how they celebrate it. They go and they ask for candy, and the kids all get candy. The kids all get these noisemakers too. You ever see these things? They're on the end of a stick, and they're like this, and the kids swing them like this, and they make noise. It's like zzz noise and stuff. And then they also have these things they blow out, make noise and things. What happens is, when they go to the synagogue to celebrate the Feast of Purim, they will read the whole book of Esther in public. The synagogue rabbi will read the book of Esther. Now, is that long? It's not that long of a book. But the book of Esther says that the name of Haman is to be drowned out forever. Haman was the guy that was trying to kill the Jews. So Haman's name was to be drowned out forever. Now all these kids are sitting there with these noisemakers. So what happens? The rabbi gets up there and he tries to read, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Haman. And he tries to get Haman's name in before the kids can drown him out. So what happens is he'll read the story of Esther, and the kids will be ready, they're ready to drown out Haman's name. And so the kids, you get them, and the guy will try to slip it in before they can do it, see? And so, by the way, is that a really cool thing for the kids? Yeah, the kids participate. And by the way, is it really cool? The kids get to drown out the rabbi, It's just like, can you imagine that in a Baptist church I grew up with, No. It's like everybody, you sit there with your hands folded and stuff, except when your parents can't see you, you're shooting spitballs off people's heads. But other than that, and so do you see how the kids participate? And they drowned out the name of Haman. This is the Feast of Purim. Usually occurs in the month of March, around then, and stuff, the Feast of Purim. It's really kind of a cool piece for the Feast of Esther. Now, Esther's way after the Pentateuch and Moses and stuff. Now, here's one that you probably know the name of real well, the Feast of Hanukkah. If I said to you, Happy Hanukkah, when does Hanukkah happen? Usually around what feast? For us. Around Christmas time, okay? Hanukkah, usually in December, around Christmas time, just before it's Christmas time. Hanukkah is actually a celebration of what the Maccabees did about 165 BC, okay? The Maccabees, is anybody familiar with the book of Maccabees? It's in the Apocrypha. It's in after the Old Testament was finished, these Maccabees, basically the same type of thing was happening. This guy named Antiochus Epiphanes was a really nasty fellow up in Syria. Syria was coming down into Israel trying to kill the Israelites and destroy them. They weren't allowed to circumcise. They burned the scriptures. They killed Jews and stuff and were trying to dominate the Jews. And what happened is these Maccabees rose up. Their name actually means hammer. The Maccabees rose up and revolted against the Syrian ruler, and they purified the temple. And when they purified the temple, God multiplied the oil of the temple. And so the lampstand lasted for 8 days instead of for 7. And so they celebrate then the Feast of Hanukkah, celebrating the Maccabean purification of the temple. By the way, did Jesus celebrate Hanukkah? Did Jesus celebrate Hanukkah? John chapter 10, verse 22 says flat out, it was the Feast of Dedication, and Jesus was going down there and stuff. So even Jesus, by the way, was Jesus pretty Jewish? Yeah, pretty Jewish, okay. Jesus is Jewish, and he celebrates the Jewish feast of Hanukkah. I mean, that's a Jewish feast that Jesus celebrated. And so it mentions the Feast of Dedication, which is the Feast of Hanukkah, from the period of the Maccabees down in. And so these are the feasts of Israel. And it's kind of a neat thing. The Jews like to celebrate their feasts, and so do we, right? So